The wagon wheels splintered apart with a crack that echoed across the vast Colorado plains like a gunshot, sending Melody Everhart lurching forward against the driver's bench hard enough to knock the breath from her lungs. She gripped the reins tight as the horses whinnied and stamped, the entire wagon listing dangerously to one side as wood scraped against stone, and the axle shrieked in protest. Dust billowed up around her in choking clouds, and for one terrible moment she thought the whole contraption might flip entirely, sending her and everything she owned tumbling across the unforgiving terrain. But gravity settled the wagon at an awkward angle instead, leaving her stranded and shaking in the middle of nowhere with the September sun beating down mercilessly and not another soul in sight. Or so she thought. Melody climbed down carefully, her boots hitting the dry earth with a soft thud as she assessed the damage. The wheel was completely destroyed, spokes jutting out at odd angles like broken bones. She pressed a hand to her forehead, feeling sweat already beading there despite the autumn season. She had been traveling for 3 weeks now, making her way from Kansas City to Silverton, Colorado, where her late aunt's property supposedly waited for her. The lawyer's letter had been specific about the location, about the small ranch house, and the few acres of land that now belonged to her as the only living relative. It was supposed to be a new start, a chance to escape the suffocating expectations of her family, and the marriage they kept trying to arrange to a banker twice her age. Now she was stranded, and the sun would be setting in a few hours. She walked around the wagon, taking stock. Her trunk was still secure in the back, along with supplies she had carefully rationed. The horses seemed unharmed, just agitated. But without a wheel, she was going nowhere. The landscape stretched endlessly in every direction, all scrub brush and rolling hills dotted with pine trees. Mountains rose in the distance, their peaks already dusted with early snow, beautiful but utterly unhelpful. "Well, this is just perfect," she muttered, pushing a strand of dark hair back from her face. At 23, she had thought herself capable and independent, ready to handle whatever challenges came with traveling alone. Her father had called her foolish. Her mother had cried for 3 days. Maybe they had been right. No. She straightened her shoulders. She had made it this far. She would figure something out. The sound of hoofbeats made her spin around, heart suddenly hammering. A lone rider was approaching from the west, moving at an easy canter. As he drew closer, Melody could make out more details. A tall man on a paint horse, wearing a brown hat pulled low and a dark vest over a blue shirt. He sat his saddle like he was born to it, moving with the horse rather than just sitting on it. Even from a distance, there was something commanding about his presence. Melody's hand instinctively went to the small pistol she kept in her skirt pocket. She was alone and vulnerable. She had to be careful. The rider slowed as he approached, raising one hand in a gesture that seemed meant to be reassuring. "Afternoon, miss," he called out when he was close enough. His voice was deep and carried easily across the space between them. "Looks like you have got some trouble there." He drew his horse to a stop about 10 feet away, keeping a respectful distance. Now Melody could see his face beneath the brim of his hat, strong-jawed, with a straight nose and eyes that were in startling shade of blue-gray. He looked to be in his late 20s, sun-bronzed and solid in the way of men who spent their lives working outdoors. A few days' worth of stubble shadowed his jaw. "My wheel broke," Melody said, keeping her voice steady. "I did not see the rock until it was too late." The man dismounted in one fluid motion and approached slowly, his hands visible and away from the gun belt at his hip. He walked to the broken wheel and crouched down to examine it, running his fingers over the splintered wood. "You hit that boulder pretty hard," he observed. "Axle is bent too." You are not going anywhere on this. Melody's heart sank even though she had already known as much. Hearing it confirmed made it real. Is there a town nearby? Somewhere I could get help, he stood, brushing dust from his hands. Silverton is about 8 miles northeast. I was heading that direction myself. His eyes met hers and she found herself unable to look away. There was an intensity to his gaze, but also something else. Concern, maybe. You are on Vaughn land right now. My land, actually, Kade Vaughn. He touched the brim of his hat. My ranch house is about 3 miles south. I can take you there, get you settled, and then tomorrow I will come back with a wagon and some men to haul this in for repairs. Melody hesitated. Everything she had been taught screamed at her to be cautious, to not trust strange men in the middle of nowhere. But what choice did she have? Night was coming and she certainly could not stay out here alone. This man, Kade Vaughn, did not seem threatening. His offer sounded genuine. I appreciate the offer, Mr. Vaughn, she said carefully, but I do not want to impose. If you could perhaps send someone back with a wagon, I could wait here. Kade shook his head. Not safe, miss. Besides the cold, once the sun goes down, we have had mountain lion sightings in this area. And there are sometimes drifters passing through who would not think twice about taking advantage of a woman alone. His expression was serious. I give you my word you will be safe at my ranch. My housekeeper, Mrs. Chen, lives there. You would not be alone with just me. The mention of a housekeeper eased some of Melody's worry. She studied Kade's face, trying to read him. He looked honest, his gaze direct and open. And really, what choice did she have? All right, she said finally. Thank you. I am Melody Everhart. Something shifted in Kade's expression, a slight softening around his eyes. Melody, that is a pretty name. He turned to look at her wagon. Let me help you get your things. We can load what you need onto my horse. He is strong enough to carry extra weight for a short ride. We will come back for the rest tomorrow. They worked together to pull her trunk from the wagon bed. It was heavy, packed with clothes and books and a few precious items from her old life. Kade lifted it like it weighed nothing, securing it behind his saddle with practiced efficiency. Melody grabbed a smaller bag with her essentials and the food supplies she did not want to leave to scavengers. The horses, she asked, glancing at her team. We will take them with us. I have got extra stalls. Kade untied them from the wagon and fashioned a lead rope. Can you ride? Yes, but I do not have a saddle here. You will ride with me then. Unless you would rather walk 3 miles, the corner of his mouth quirked up slightly, and Melody realized he was teasing. She found herself almost smiling back despite the circumstances. I think I will take the ride, thank you. Kade mounted first, then reached down to help her up. His hand was warm and calloused when she took it, strong as he pulled her up behind him. She settled onto the horse's back, very aware of how close she was to this stranger, how she had to wrap her arms around his waist to keep her balance. Hold on tight, Kade said over his shoulder. He is gentle, but I do not want you falling off. Melody tightened her grip, feeling the solid warmth of him through his shirt. He smelled like leather and sage, and something earthy she could not quite name. It was not unpleasant. She felt the muscles in his back shift as he gathered the reins and urged the horse forward, leading her team behind them. They rode in silence for a while. The landscape rolled past, golden and vast under the late afternoon sun. Melody found herself relaxing slightly, lulled by the steady rhythm of the horse's gait and the warmth of the man in front of her. She could feel the rise and fall of his breathing. So you were heading to Silverton, Kade said after a time. You have family there. Not exactly. My aunt passed away and left me some property, a small ranch supposedly. What was your aunt's name? Iris Everhart. Well, Iris Grayson by marriage, but she kept her maiden name after her husband died. Kade was quiet for a moment. I knew Iris. She had the property about 5 miles east of town, kept to herself mostly, but she was kind. Would bring preserves into town sometimes. I am sorry for your loss. The genuine sympathy in his voice touched something in Melody's chest. Thank you. I did not know her well. She left Kansas when I was young, but I appreciate that. So you are planning to stay, work the ranch. Melody had not really thought that far ahead. She had been so focused on getting away, on claiming her independence, that she had not considered the practicalities of actually running a ranch. I suppose so. I do not know much about ranching, but I can learn. She felt more than heard his quiet chuckle. It is hard work, especially for someone alone. I am not afraid of hard work, Mr. Vaughn. I believe you. There was something approving in his tone, and you can call me Kade. We do not stand much on formality out here. Then you should call me Melody. Melody, he repeated, and she liked the way her name sounded in his deep voice. They crested a hill and Melody caught her first glimpse of Kade's ranch. It was larger than she had expected, a sprawling affair with a main house, a big barn, several outbuildings and extensive corrals. Cattle dotted the fields beyond, and she could see a few men working near the barn even at this late hour. The main house itself was impressive, 2 stories of solid construction with a wide porch that wrapped around at least 2 sides. This is your ranch. Melody could not keep the surprise from her voice. Family land, Kade said simply. My father built most of it. I have been adding on since I took over 5 years ago. He was clearly more than just a simple cowboy. This was a substantial operation, and that meant Kade Vaughn was a man of some importance in the area. Melody felt suddenly self-conscious about her dusty traveling dress and wind-blown hair. They rode into the yard and several ranch hands looked up with curious interest. Kade dismounted and helped Melody down, his hands steady on her waist as her feet found the ground. She was stiff from the ride and stumbled slightly. His hands tightened, keeping her upright. Steady there. Thank you. I am fine, just not used to riding like that. Travis, Kade called to one of the men. A young cowboy with red hair and freckles jogged over. Take care of the horses, will you? And have someone ride out and check on Miss Everhart's wagon. Make sure no one bothers it overnight. Yes, boss. Travis took the reins, his eyes darting curiously to Melody before he led the animals away. Kade retrieved her trunk and bag, carrying them as he headed toward the house. Come on. Let us get you inside and settled. The front door opened before they reached it, and a small, sturdy woman with graying black hair and sharp dark eyes stepped out. She wore a simple gray dress and an apron, and she crossed her arms as she looked from Kade to Melody and back. Kade Vaughn, what have you brought home now? But there was no real reproach in her voice, just fond exasperation. Mrs. Chen, this is Melody Everhart. Her wagon broke down on the north pasture. She's going to stay with us tonight, and tomorrow we will help her get into Silverton. Kade set the trunk down on the porch. Melody, this is Mrs. Chen. She has been taking care of this place since before I was born, and she will not let me forget it. Mrs. Chen's expression softened as she looked at Melody. Well, you poor thing. Come in, come in. You look exhausted. She ushered Melody inside with a gentle hand on her elbow. I will get a room ready and heat some water for washing. Have you eaten? I had some jerky at midday, Melody said, looking around the interior of the house with wide eyes. It was beautiful, all warm wood and comfortable furniture. Much more refined than she would have expected from a bachelor rancher. Jerky, that is not proper food. Mrs. Chen shook her head. I will make you a good meal. Kade, you make yourself useful and bring that trunk upstairs. The blue room. Yes, madam. Kade's lips twitched with amusement as he hefted the trunk and headed for the stairs. Mrs. Chen led Melody through the house. keeping up a steady stream of chatter. The blue room turned out to be a lovely space on the second floor, with a large bed covered in a quilt, a dresser, a washstand, and a window that looked out over the ranch yard. It was nicer than anywhere Melody had stayed in weeks of travel. "You rest and wash up, Mrs." Chen said, bustling around to light a lamp as the sun began to set outside. "I will bring hot water and then get supper started. You will feel better once you have had a proper meal and a good night's sleep." "Thank you so much," Melody said sincerely. "I do not know what I would have done if Kade had not come along." Mrs. Chen paused at the door, her expression knowing. "He is a good man, that one, always helping people. Too good sometimes, his heart is too big," she smiled. "But do not tell him I said so, he thinks I just nag him all the time." After Mrs. Chen left, Melody sank onto the edge of the bed, suddenly feeling the full weight of the day's stress. Her hands were shaking slightly. She had been so close to Silverton, to her new life, and then everything had fallen apart. But maybe, she thought, looking around the comfortable room, maybe it had not fallen apart. Maybe it had just taken an unexpected turn. She thought of Kade's steady hands helping her onto his horse, the warmth of his back against her as they rode, the way he had said her name. Something had sparked between them in that first moment, something she could not quite name but definitely felt. A knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. "Come in." Kade entered carrying a large pitcher of steaming water. He set it on the washstand, then stood there somewhat awkwardly as if unsure what to say now that they were alone. The room suddenly felt smaller with him in it. "Thank you," Melody said, standing, "for everything. The rescue bringing me here, the room, it is very kind." "It is nothing." Kade shifted his weight. "I could not just leave you out there. Some men would have." His eyes met hers, intense and serious. Then they would not be much of men. The air between them felt charged somehow. Melody found herself taking a step closer without quite meaning to. "Still." "Thank you, Kade." He said her name softly. "Melody, I have to tell you something." He took a breath. "When I came over that rise and saw your wagon broken down, my first thought was worry, but my second thought was that maybe, just maybe, some accidents are meant to happen." Melody's heart skipped. "What do you mean?" "I mean that I do not believe much in fate or destiny or any of that. I believe a man makes his own way. But seeing you there, getting to talk to you on the ride back, having you here now." He shook his head, a slight smile on his lips. "It feels right somehow. Like you were supposed to end up here." She should have found it strange or presumptuous. They had only just met. But instead, Melody felt warmth spreading through her chest because she felt the same way. There was something about Kade Vaughn that drew her, that made her want to stay close and learn everything about him. "Maybe you are right," she said quietly. "Maybe some accidents are meant to happen." The smile that spread across Kade's face transformed him, lighting up his whole expression. He looked younger, more open. "I should let you rest, but Melody, I am glad you broke down on my land." "So am I," she admitted. After he left, Melody washed her face and hands in the warm water, changed into a cleaner dress, and tried to tame her hair. Her reflection in the small mirror above the washstand looked back at her with bright eyes and flushed cheeks. She looked like a woman on the edge of something new and exciting. When she made her way downstairs, following the sound of voices and the smell of cooking food, she found Kade and Mrs. Chen in the kitchen. It was a large, comfortable space with a big stove, a scarred wooden table, and herbs hanging from the rafters. Kade was leaning against the counter, listening to Mrs. Chen talk while she stirred something in a pot. He looked up when Melody entered, and that same warm smile crossed his face. "Feel better?" he asked. "Much, thank you. Sit, sit." Mrs. Chen gestured to the table. "Supper is ready." The meal was simple but delicious. Beef stew with vegetables, fresh bread, and canned peaches for dessert. Melody ate hungrily, realizing just how long it had been since she had had a proper hot meal. Mrs. Chen and Kade kept the conversation flowing easily, asking about her journey and telling stories about the area. "So your aunt's place is the old Grayson Ranch," Kade said, sopping up stew with a piece of bread. "It has been empty about 6 months since she passed. The lawyer would have been looking after it, making sure no squatters moved in." "You know what condition it is in?" Melody asked. Kade and Mrs. Chen exchanged a glance. "I rode past it a few weeks ago," Kade said carefully. "The house looked all right from the outside, but I cannot speak to the interior. The land is good, though. Your aunt had about 50 acres, some of it grazing land, some forested. There is a creek that runs through the property. Did she have cattle, horses?" "She sold off most of the livestock before she died. Knew she was sick and did not want to leave animals with no one to care for them." Kade paused. "You are really planning to work it yourself?" "I have to. It is all I have." Melody set down her spoon. "My parents wanted me to marry a man I could never love, to live a life that would have suffocated me. This ranch, my aunt's gift, it is my chance to be independent, to build something of my own." She could hear the passion in her own voice, the determination. Kade was looking at her with something like admiration. "Then you will do it," he said simply. "And if you need help, you ask. That is how we do things out here. Neighbors help neighbors. I do not want charity. It is not charity. It is community." He held her gaze. "Besides, I have a feeling you will find ways to return any favors." Mrs. Chen was watching them both with a small, knowing smile. She stood and began clearing plates. "You two go sit on the porch. I will handle this." "Mrs. Chen, let me help," Melody protested, but the older woman waved her off. "You are a guest. Go on, enjoy the evening. It is a beautiful night." Kade led Melody out to the front porch. The sun had set completely now, and stars were beginning to emerge in the darkening sky. The air was cool but not cold, fresh and clean. They sat in 2 rocking chairs, and for a while they just listened to the sounds of the ranch settling down for the night, horses moving in the barn, the distant lowing of cattle, the chirp of insects. "It is peaceful here," Melody said softly. "It is. That is what I love about it." Kade stretched his long legs out in front of him. "I have been to Denver a few times and even down to Santa Fe once. Too many people, too much noise. This is where I am meant to be." "You have never wanted to go east, see the big cities?" "Not particularly." "What about you? You came from Kansas City. Do you miss it?" Melody thought about it. "I miss some things. Friends I had, certain places, but mostly, no. I felt trapped there. Every decision was made for me, who I should talk to, what I should wear, how I should act. And then, when my parents decided I should marry Mr. Pemberton, that was the last straw." "Mr. Pemberton." "Walter Pemberton. He owns 3 banks and has buried 2 wives already. He is 56 years old and has a mustache that makes him look like a walrus." Melody could not help the disgust that crept into her voice. "My parents thought I should be grateful for his interest. That financial security was more important than anything else." Kade's jaw had tightened as she spoke. "You deserve better than that." "I know I do. That is why I left." She turned to look at him. "What about you? Is there a Mrs. Vaughn I should know about?" He laughed, a genuine sound that made her smile. "No. There was someone once, a few years back, Sarah Wilkins. We courted for about 6 months, and I thought maybe she was the one. But she wanted to move to California, be near the ocean. I wanted to stay here. We could not find a middle ground, so we ended it. That must have been hard." "It was for a while. But looking back, I think we were not really right for each other anyway. We wanted different things." He was quiet for a moment. "I have been waiting, I guess. Waiting for someone who fits, who understands this life and wants to be part of it." The words hung in the air between them, heavy with implication. Melody's heart was beating fast. They had known each other for only a few hours, but already she felt something profound developing. It was crazy, impractical, probably foolish, and yet she could not deny it. "Kade," she started, not sure what she wanted to say. He turned to her, his face partly shadowed in the darkness. "I know it is fast. I know we just met, but I have to tell you, Melody, I feel something here, something real." "I feel it too," she whispered. "It is terrifying." "Yeah." He reached over and took her hand, his fingers warm and strong around hers. "It is. But maybe that is how you know it means something." They sat like that for a long time, holding hands on the porch while the stars wheeled overhead. Melody felt like she was standing on the edge of a cliff, ready to jump without knowing what was below. But with Kade's hand in hers, she thought maybe she was ready to take that leap. Eventually, the night grew cold enough that Melody shivered. Kade noticed immediately and stood, pulling her gently to her feet. "You should get some rest. Tomorrow will be a busy day getting your wagon sorted out and getting you to your aunt's place." "I suppose you are right." But she did not want to let go of his hand. "Melody." He stepped closer, and suddenly they were inches apart. She could see the flecks of gray in his blue eyes, the stubble on his jaw, the way his lips parted slightly as he looked down at her. "Can I kiss you?" She should say no. She should be sensible and careful. Instead she said, "Yes." Kade cupped her face in his hands, his palms rough but gentle against her skin. He kissed her slowly, softly, like she was something precious. Melody's eyes fluttered closed as she leaned into him, her hands coming up to rest on his chest. She could feel his heart beating hard beneath her palm, as fast as her own. The kiss deepened, and Melody felt heat pooling in her stomach, spreading through her limbs. Nothing had ever felt like this. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Kade rested his forehead against hers. "That was," he started. "I know." He laughed softly, his breath warm against her lips. "Get some sleep, Melody Everhart. We will figure out the rest tomorrow." She nodded and forced herself to step back to walk to the door. She paused there and looked back. Kade was still standing where she had left him, watching her with an expression that made her knees weak. "Good night, Kade." "Good night, Melody." She went upstairs in a daze, her lips still tingling from his kiss. When she crawled into the soft bed in the blue room, she expected to lie awake for hours, her mind racing. Instead, she fell asleep almost immediately, a smile on her face and warmth in her heart. The next morning dawned bright and clear. Melody woke to sunlight streaming through the window and the smell of coffee and bacon drifting up from downstairs. For a moment she was disoriented, not remembering where she was. Then it all came flooding back. The broken wagon, Kade's rescue, the kiss on the porch. She dressed quickly in a practical skirt and blouse, pinned up her hair and headed downstairs. The house was quiet, but she could hear voices outside. Following them, she found Kade in the yard with several of his ranch hands, clearly giving instructions about the day's work. He looked different in the morning light, more businesslike in his worn work clothes and leather chaps. But when he saw her, his whole face lit up. "Morning," he called, breaking away from the group and walking over to meet her. "Did you sleep well?" "Wonderfully, actually." "Better than I have in weeks." "Good." He seemed pleased by that. "Come have some breakfast, then we will head out to get your wagon." Mrs. Chen had outdone herself with breakfast. Eggs, bacon, fried potatoes, biscuits with gravy, and fresh coffee. Melody ate until she was pleasantly full, chatting with Mrs. Chen about the garden and the chickens and various other ranch matters. Kade joined them after finishing with his men, and the easy domesticity of it all made Melody's chest ache with longing. This was what she wanted. A home, a place to belong, people to care for and who cared for her. After breakfast, Kade hitched up a wagon pulled by two sturdy horses. He helped Melody up onto the bench seat, then climbed up beside her and took the reins. Two of his ranch hands, Travis and an older man named Hank, followed on horseback. The ride to where Melody's wagon sat broken took about 45 minutes. In daylight, she could see the landscape more clearly. Rolling grasslands dotted with clusters of pine and aspen, rocky outcroppings, and in the distance those magnificent mountains. It was beautiful country, wild and open. "That is your aunt's land over there," Kade said, pointing to the east. "Borders mine on the north side. We share about a mile of fence line. So we would be neighbors." "That is right." He glanced at her with a smile. "Convenient, is it not?" When they reached her broken wagon, Kade and his men went to work immediately. They assessed the damage, unloaded the rest of Melody's belongings into Kade's wagon, and then carefully maneuvered her wagon onto a special rig designed for hauling broken-down equipment. It was hot work, and Melody found herself watching the way Kade's muscles flexed as he lifted and pulled, the way sweat dampened his shirt and made it cling to his broad shoulders. "See something you like," Travis teased, and Melody realized she had been staring. She felt her face flame red. "Mind your business, Travis," Kade said, but there was no heat in it. He caught Melody's eye and winked, making her blush even deeper. By early afternoon, they had everything loaded and were heading toward Silverton. The town came into view gradually. First a church steeple rising above the trees, then the scattered buildings of the outskirts, and finally the main street with its shops and saloons and businesses. It was a decent-sized town, larger than some of the places Melody had passed through, with an air of prosperity about it. Kade drove directly to a large building with a sign reading Vaughn Mercantile and General Store. Melody looked at him in surprise. "Your family owns the store too?" "My Uncle Martin runs it. My father's brother. We can leave your wagon at the livery for repairs, but I figured you might want to meet some people and pick up supplies first." A bell chimed as they entered the store. It was well stocked and organized, with everything from tools to fabric to canned goods. A man who looked like an older version of Kade emerged from the back, his hair silver but his eyes the same blue-gray. "Kade, good to see you." His gaze slid to Melody with curiosity. "And who is this?" "Uncle Martin, this is Melody Everhart, Iris Grayson's niece. She is here to take over the property." Martin's face brightened. "Iris's niece. Well, welcome to Silverton, Miss Everhart. Your aunt was a good woman. We were all sad to lose her." "Thank you. I am looking forward to seeing her property and making a life here." "Broke down on the North Road yesterday," Kade added. "I am helping her get settled." The look Martin gave his nephew was knowing and amused. "I see. Well, Miss Everhart, if you need anything at all, you just let me know. I will make sure you get good prices." They spent some time in the store while Melody picked out essentials she would need for the house. Martin insisted on giving her a substantial discount despite her protests, saying it was the neighborly thing to do. She was beginning to understand what Kade had meant about community. From there, they went to the lawyer's office to officially claim the property. Mr. Hayes, a thin man with spectacles and ink-stained fingers, produced all the necessary paperwork and handed over a set of keys. "The house is in good condition, Miss Everhart. I have had someone check on it weekly. Your aunt left instructions that any remaining funds in her accounts should be used to maintain the property until you arrived, so the roof has been patched and the well has been serviced." Melody felt a rush of gratitude for an aunt she had barely known. That was very thoughtful of her. She was a thoughtful woman. "She also left you a letter. I was instructed to give it to you personally." He handed her a sealed envelope with her name written in elegant script. Melody took it with trembling fingers. "Thank you, Mr. Hayes." Outside, she stood on the wooden sidewalk and stared at the envelope. Cade came up beside her, his presence solid and reassuring. "You want to read it now or later?" "Later, I think, when I am at the house." She tucked it carefully into her bag. "Will you take me there now?" "Of course." The ride to her aunt's ranch took about 30 minutes. With every passing mile, Melody's anticipation grew. This was her future, her new life. When they finally turned onto a narrow road marked by a wooden sign that read Grayson Ranch, her heart was pounding. The house came into view, nestled in a small valley with the creek Cade had mentioned running nearby. It was smaller than Cade's place but charming. A single-story structure with a peaked roof, a front porch, and windows with faded blue shutters. The barn was a bit worn but standing straight. The whole property had an air of patient waiting, as if it had been holding its breath for her to arrive. "Oh," Melody breathed. "It is perfect." Cade smiled at her reaction. "Let us go see the inside." The key turned smoothly in the lock and the door swung open to reveal a surprisingly cozy interior. The front room held a fireplace, some simple furniture, and shelves lined with books. To the left was a small kitchen with a cast-iron stove. To the right were 2 bedrooms, one clearly the main and one smaller. Everything was dusty from disuse but clean otherwise. Melody walked through slowly, taking it all in. She could picture herself here, picture making this place truly her own. In the bedroom, she found more of her aunt's belongings. A quilt on the bed, a brush on the dresser, a photograph of a stern-looking couple who must have been Melody's grandparents. Travis and Hank brought in her trunk and other belongings, stacking them in the front room. Cade directed them quietly, then sent them back to town with the wagon that needed repairs. "Tell the livery to take their time and do it right," he instructed. "And you two can have the rest of the day off once you get back to the ranch." After they left, it was just Cade and Melody in the quiet house. She walked back out to the porch and sat on the steps, suddenly overwhelmed. This was real. This was happening. She was here in Colorado with her own land and her own house and a future that was entirely up to her. Cade sat down beside her, close enough that their shoulders touched. "What are you thinking?" "That I am terrified and excited and grateful and overwhelmed all at once." She laughed shakily. "Is that normal?" "I would say so. You have taken a huge step." He was quiet for a moment. "You know you do not have to do this alone, right? I meant what I said about helping." Melody turned to look at him. In the afternoon sunlight, his eyes were more blue than gray, warm and sincere. "Why are you being so kind to me? We barely know each other." "Maybe I want to change that. Maybe I want to know everything about you." He reached over and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, his fingers lingering on her cheek. "Maybe I think what I said last night is true. Maybe your wagon breaking down on my land was not an accident. Maybe it was fate or destiny or whatever you want to call it bringing you to me." Her breath caught. "Cade, I know I am being too forward. My mother, God rest her soul, would be horrified at how fast I am moving. But Melody, I look at you and I see someone brave and strong and beautiful. I see someone who could build a life here, who could be happy here. And I want to be part of that life if you will have me." It was too much, too fast. Any sensible woman would tell him to slow down, to give them time to get to know each other properly. But Melody had spent her whole life being sensible and careful, and where had it gotten her? Promised to a man she despised, living a life that made her miserable. "I want that too," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I have wanted it since you pulled me up onto your horse yesterday. Since you looked at me like I mattered. You do matter. You matter a great deal." Cade leaned in and kissed her again, deeper than last night with more urgency. Melody kissed him back with all the emotion rushing through her. Hope and desire and the beginning of something that felt a lot like love. When they broke apart, Cade rested his forehead against hers, breathing hard. Stay with me tonight, at my ranch. You can come back here tomorrow and start getting things set up, but tonight let Mrs. Chen fuss over you one more time. Let me have one more evening with you before you get busy with all this. Melody knew she should probably stay here, start making the house her own. But the thought of spending another night under Kade's roof, of sitting on the porch with him and falling asleep knowing he was nearby, was too tempting to resist. All right, she agreed. One more night. They locked up the house and rode back to Kade's ranch together on his horse, just like yesterday. Melody wrapped her arms around him and rested her cheek against his back, feeling the steady beat of his heart and the warmth of his body. She felt safe here, held close to him. She felt like she had come home. Over the next 2 weeks, Melody split her time between her property and Kade's ranch. During the days, she worked on cleaning and organizing her house, fixing small repairs and getting to know the land. Kade came by often, sometimes with a couple of his men to help with larger projects. They patched a hole in the barn roof, repaired some fence line, and cleared brush from around the house. Kade taught her about the property, about which areas were best for grazing and where the creek ran deepest. He taught her how to check the well and maintain the pump, how to tell if the barn needed repairs, how to read the land. In the evenings, more often than not, Melody ended up at Kade's ranch for dinner. Mrs. Chen welcomed her like family, and Melody found herself helping in the kitchen, learning to cook the hearty meals that ranch life demanded. After dinner, she and Kade would sit on the porch or walk around the property, talking for hours about everything and nothing. She learned that he loved to read but rarely had time for it, that he had a younger sister who lived in Denver with her husband, that his favorite season was autumn when the aspens turned gold. He learned that she played piano, that she loved thunderstorms, that she had always dreamed of having horses. She told him about her childhood, about feeling like an outsider in her own family, about the suffocating expectations that had made her feel like she was drowning. With Kade, she felt like she could finally breathe. The attraction between them grew stronger every day. Stolen kisses became longer, more heated. Kade's hands would linger on her waist or tangle in her hair. Melody found herself thinking about him constantly, wanting to be near him, counting the hours until she would see him again. On a warm Sunday afternoon, Kade took her to see the far corners of his property on horseback. He had given her one of his gentler mares to ride, a sweet-tempered bay named Daisy. They rode for hours, climbing into the foothills where the aspens grew thick and golden. At a high meadow, they stopped to rest and eat the lunch Mrs. Chen had packed. "I love it up here," Kade said, sprawled on his back in the grass and looking up at the cloudless sky. "Always have. When I was a boy, I would come up here to think, to be alone." Melody lay down beside him, their shoulders touching. "It is beautiful, you can see forever. That is why I like it." He turned his head to look at her. "I want to share everything with you, Melody, all the places that matter to me." She rolled onto her side, propping herself up on one elbow so she could look down at him. "You have given me so much already. I do not know how I will ever repay you." "I do not want repayment, I just want you." He reached up and cupped her face, his thumb stroking her cheekbone. "These past 2 weeks have been the happiest I have had in years, maybe ever." "Me too," she whispered. He pulled her down into a kiss that sent fire racing through her veins. His hands moved to her waist, then up her back, pulling her closer. Melody lost herself in the sensation, in the taste and feel of him. When his lips moved to her jaw, then her neck, she gasped and arched into him. "Melody," he groaned against her skin, "you are driving me crazy." "Good," she breathed. "I feel the same way." He pulled back enough to look at her, his eyes dark with desire. "I want you, I want all of you, but I want to do this right. I want to marry you, Melody, make you my wife, build a life together." Her heart felt like it might burst from her chest. "Is that a proposal, Kade Vaughn?" "Not yet. When I propose properly, it will be with a ring and the right words and everything you deserve." He kissed her softly. "But I am telling you my intentions. I am telling you that I love you." Tears pricked at Melody's eyes. "I love you too. I think I have since the moment you helped me onto your horse." They held each other close as the afternoon sun warmed them, both overwhelmed by the depth of feeling that had developed so quickly. Melody knew people would say they were being reckless, that they had not known each other long enough. But she did not care. She had never been more certain of anything in her life. As September turned to October, the aspens turned brilliant gold and the air grew crisp. Melody's house was coming together beautifully. With Kade's help, she had painted the shutters a fresh blue, repaired the porch railing, and organized the interior exactly how she wanted it. She had even started a small garden plot, though it was too late in the season to plant much. That would wait until spring. She had also read her aunt's letter, sitting alone in the house one evening with tears streaming down her face. Iris had written about regret, about how she wished she had stayed in touch more, how she hoped this gift of land would give Melody the freedom and independence Iris herself had cherished. "Make your own choices," Iris had written. "Follow your heart. Do not let anyone tell you how to live your life. You are stronger than you know." The words had resonated deeply with Melody. She felt her aunt's spirit in the house, in the land, encouraging her and cheering her on. One afternoon in mid-October, Melody was in her barn attempting to fix a stall door when she heard hoofbeats approaching. She emerged to find not Kade but a stranger, a man in his 30s with slicked-back dark hair, expensive clothes, and a superior expression. He dismounted and looked around the property with obvious disdain. "Can I help you?" Melody asked, wiping her dusty hands on her skirt. "I am looking for Melody Everhart. Would that be you?" "It would. And you are Raymond Ellis." "I am a land agent working for Mountain View Development Company. We are interested in acquiring properties in this area." Melody's eyes narrowed. "My property is not for sale. Now, hear me out before you make any hasty decisions." Ellis pulled out a folded paper from his jacket. "We are prepared to make you a very generous offer. Much more than this land is worth, honestly. Enough for you to buy a nice house in town, live comfortably without all this hard work." "I said it is not for sale." Melody's voice was firm. "I am not interested in your offer, generous or otherwise." Ellis's friendly demeanor slipped slightly. "Miss Everhart, you are a single woman trying to run a ranch alone. That is not sustainable. Eventually you will fail and then you will be forced to sell anyway for much less. Take the smart option now." "The smart option is for me to build the life I want here on my own land." "Now I would like you to leave. You are making a mistake." Ellis's voice had gone cold. "Mountain View always gets what it wants, one way or another." A chill ran down Melody's spine, but she kept her expression steady. "Is that a threat?" "It is a fact. Good day, Miss Everhart. I am sure we will speak again." He mounted and rode away, leaving Melody shaken. She immediately headed for Kade's ranch, needing to tell him about the encounter. She found him working with several horses in the corral, and the moment he saw her face, he vaulted over the fence and came to her. "What is wrong?" She told him about Raymond Ellis and his thinly veiled threat. Kade's expression grew darker and darker as she spoke. "Mountain View," he said grimly. "They have been sniffing around the area for the past year. They want to buy up land for some kind of development project. Most people have refused to sell." He made it sound like they will get the land regardless. "They can try, but they cannot force you to sell. Your property is legally yours." Kade took her hands. "But I do not like the sound of that threat. I want you to be careful. Maybe you should stay here at my ranch for a while." "I am not going to be driven from my own home by some land agent," Melody said stubbornly. I know, but just until we know more. He pulled her close. I cannot stand the thought of something happening to you. She leaned into his strength, feeling safer already. All right, for a little while. That evening, Kade called a meeting with his ranch hands and explained the situation. He assigned Travis and another young cowboy named Ben to take turns riding past Melody's property several times a day, just to keep an eye on things. He also sent word to several neighboring ranchers, warning them that Mountain View was getting aggressive. Melody moved back into the blue room at Kade's ranch, and despite the concerning circumstances, she found herself enjoying the return to the routine of being there. Mrs. Chen was delighted to have her back, and the evenings with Kade were precious. They would sit by the fireplace now that the nights were cold, talking and reading together, stealing kisses when Mrs. Chen was not looking. A few days after Ellis's visit, Melody received a formal written offer from Mountain View Development Company. It was indeed a substantial sum, enough to live on for years, but Melody tore the letter up without a second thought and threw it in the fire. Good for you, Kade said when she told him. That land is yours. Do not let anyone bully you into giving it up. But Mountain View was not done. Over the next week, strange things started happening. Melody's fence line was cut in 2 places, letting animals wander onto neighboring property. The lock on her barn door was broken. Someone left a threatening note nailed to her front door. Sell now or face the consequences. Kade was furious. He reported the incidents to the sheriff, a gruff man named Tom Garrett who promised to investigate but admitted he had little to go on. Unless you catch them in the act, there is not much I can do, he said apologetically. Then I will catch them, Kade said grimly. He organized a watch system, with his ranch hands taking shifts to patrol Melody's property at night. He also spent many nights there himself, sitting on the porch with a rifle across his knees, waiting for trouble. Melody insisted on being there with him, unwilling to let him face danger alone. On a cold October night with frost glittering on the grass, they sat together on her porch wrapped in blankets. The moon was nearly full, casting silver light across the landscape. It was beautiful and peaceful, hard to believe anyone meant them harm. I hate this, Melody said softly. I hate that my being here is causing problems for you. You are not causing problems. Those land developers are. Kade's arm tightened around her shoulders. And I would face a lot worse than some cut fences to be with you. I love you, she said, turning to kiss him. I love you so much it scares me sometimes. Do not be scared. I am not going anywhere. He kissed her back, deep and slow. In fact, I have been thinking. About what? He pulled back and reached into his pocket, drawing out a small box. Melody's heart stopped. In the moonlight, she could see the nervous hope on his face. Melody Everhart, I know we have only known each other about 6 weeks. I know people will say we are rushing, but I have never been more sure of anything in my life. He opened the box to reveal a simple gold band with a small diamond. I love you. I want to spend every day with you, building a life together, facing whatever comes. Will you marry me? Melody could not speak past the lump in her throat. Tears streamed down her face as she nodded frantically. Is that a yes? Kade asked, his voice rough with emotion. Yes, she finally managed. Yes, 1,000 times yes. He slipped the ring onto her finger and it fit perfectly. Then he was kissing her and she was kissing him back, both of them laughing and crying at the same time. Despite the danger lurking around them, despite all the uncertainty, in that moment everything was perfect. They sat wrapped in each other's arms until dawn started to lighten the eastern sky. No one had come to cause trouble that night, but neither of them cared. They had each other, and they had a future to plan. The next morning, Kade rode into Silverton and made arrangements with the minister. They would be married in 2 weeks, a small ceremony with just close friends and neighbors. Melody sent a short letter to her parents informing them of her decision, though she did not expect them to come or even to be happy for her. They had made their choice when they tried to force her into an unwanted marriage. Now she was making hers. Mrs. Chen was overjoyed at the news and immediately began planning the celebration dinner. "I knew it," she kept saying with a huge smile. "I knew from the moment he brought you home. You are perfect for each other." Kade's uncle Martin was equally pleased and insisted on giving them a generous gift for their household. "Your father would be proud," he told Kade, clapping him on the shoulder. "You have found yourself a strong woman. That is what you need out here." But the happiness was tinged with ongoing worry about Mountain View. 2 nights before the wedding, things came to a head. Melody and Kade were at her property, along with Travis and Ben, who were on watch when they heard horses approaching. 4 men rode up, Raymond Ellis among them. The others looked like hired muscle, rough men with guns on their hips. Kade stood and moved in front of Melody, his rifle held ready but not aimed. "This is private property. State your business or leave." "We are here to make one final offer," Ellis said smoothly. "Miss Everhart, we have increased our price." He named a sum that made Melody's eyes widen despite herself. "That is our absolute best offer. Take it and you can live anywhere you want. Refuse and you will regret it." "The answer is no," Melody said, stepping up beside Kade. "It will always be no." "This is my home and I am not leaving." Ellis's expression hardened. "Then you are a fool. We will have this land with or without your cooperation." "Is that a threat?" Kade's voice was dangerously quiet. "Because if it is, you should know the sheriff is aware of your harassment. And I have witnesses here who have heard every word you have said." Travis and Ben stepped into view from the shadows, both armed. Ellis's hired men shifted uneasily. "This is not over," Ellis said coldly. "Mountain View Development always gets what it wants." "Not this time," Melody said firmly. "Now get off my land." The men left, but the threat hung heavy in the air. Kade insisted Melody pack a bag and come back to his ranch immediately. "After the wedding, we will figure out a permanent solution, but right now, I want you somewhere safe." The next day, Kade met with Sheriff Garrett again, this time with several other ranchers who had also been harassed by Mountain View. Together, they presented a united front, making it clear that they would not be intimidated. The sheriff promised to increase patrols in the area and to bring in federal marshals if necessary. "These development companies think they can push people around out here," Sheriff Garrett said. "But we have got laws, and those laws protect property owners." "You have done nothing wrong, Miss Everhart. We will make sure Mountain View understands that." On a crisp November morning, Melody and Kade were married in Silverton's small church. Melody wore a simple but beautiful dress of cream-colored silk that Mrs. Chen had helped her make. Kade looked handsome in his best suit, his hair neatly combed for once, though Melody could see the nervous excitement in his eyes. The ceremony was short and sweet, with about 30 people in attendance. Ranch hands, neighbors, townspeople who had known Iris and welcomed her niece. When the minister pronounced them husband and wife and Kade kissed her, Melody felt like her heart might explode with happiness. This man, this good, strong, kind man was hers now, and she was his. The celebration afterward at Kade's ranch was joyful and boisterous. Mrs. Chen had outdone herself with food, and someone had brought a fiddle. There was dancing and laughter and genuine warmth. As Melody danced with her new husband, she looked around at all these people who had become her friends and family in such a short time. "Happy?" Kade asked, pulling her close. "So happy I could burst," she said honestly. "I never imagined my life could be like this." "It is only going to get better," he promised. That night, alone together for the first time as husband and wife, they came together with passion and tenderness. Kade was gentle and patient, making sure Melody felt safe and cherished. When they finally lay tangled together afterward, both breathless and sated, Melody felt complete in a way she never had before. "I love you, Mrs. Vaughn," Kade murmured against her hair. "I love you too, Mr. Vaughn," she whispered back. The next few months were a period of adjustment and joy. Melody officially moved into Kade's ranch house, though she kept her aunt's property and they spent time there regularly. They decided to use it as a place to raise horses, something Melody had always wanted to do. Kade helped her select and purchase several good mares and a strong stallion, and they set about building up a small breeding operation. Mountain View Development made a few more attempts to purchase land in the area, but the united front presented by the local ranchers discouraged them. Eventually, word came that they had moved on to a different area, and the harassment stopped. Melody's property was finally safe. As winter set in, Melody discovered she was pregnant. The joy on Kade's face when she told him was something she would never forget. "A baby," he kept saying, his hand on her still flat stomach. "Our baby." "Are you happy?" she asked, though she could see that he was. "Happy does not begin to cover it." He kissed her deeply. "You have given me everything, Melody, everything I ever wanted." The winter was hard, with heavy snows that sometimes kept them housebound for days at a time. But Melody loved it, loved the cozy evenings by the fire with Kade, loved watching the snow blanket the land in pristine white. She read voraciously from Kade's collection of books and worked on baby clothes with Mrs. Chen, who was nearly as excited about the coming child as the parents were. In early April, as the snow was melting and the first hints of spring appeared, Melody went into labor. It was long and difficult, and there were moments when Kade feared he might lose her. But she was strong, stronger than anyone had given her credit for, and when dawn broke the next morning, the sound of a baby's cry filled the house. "A boy," the doctor announced, placing the squirming, red-faced infant in Melody's arms. "A healthy baby boy." Melody looked down at her son with tears streaming down her face. He was perfect, absolutely perfect. Kade sat beside her on the bed, his arm around her shoulders, staring at their child with wonder. "What should we name him?" Melody asked softly. "I was thinking about your aunt," Kade said. "She gave you the land that brought you here to me. Without her, we might never have met. What about Grayson, after her married name, Grayson Vaughn?" Melody smiled through her tears. "It is perfect." Watching Kade hold their son for the first time, seeing the love and tenderness on his face, Melody thought back to that day her wagon had broken down. She had been lost and afraid, stranded in unfamiliar territory. And then Kade had appeared, and everything had changed. "Some accidents are meant to happen," he had said. Looking at her husband and son, at the life they had built together, Melody knew he had been absolutely right. The years that followed were full and rich. Melody and Kade had 2 more children, a daughter they named Iris after Melody's aunt, and another son they called James after Kade's father. The ranch prospered, growing larger and more successful each year. The horse breeding operation at Melody's original property became well known throughout Colorado, producing quality animals that fetched good prices. Melody learned everything there was to know about ranching, becoming as capable and knowledgeable as any of the men who worked for them. She could ride as well as Kade, could rope and brand cattle, could deliver foals and doctor sick animals. The soft city girl who had arrived in a broken wagon was gone, replaced by a strong ranch woman with calloused hands and a sun-bronzed face. But she never lost her love of books and music, and she made sure to pass those things on to her children. Most evenings found the family gathered in the front room, Kade reading aloud while Melody worked on mending, and the children played quietly. On special occasions, they would travel to Denver or even as far as Kansas City, exposing the children to culture and cities, though all three always seemed happy to return to their Colorado home. Melody's parents eventually came to visit when Grayson was 3 years old. They stayed for a week, and though things were initially awkward, by the end of the visit her mother had tears in her eyes. "I was wrong," she told Melody. "I was so wrong about what you needed, about what would make you happy. You have built a beautiful life here." "I have," Melody agreed. "And I am happy, Mother, truly happy. I can see that. Your father can too, though he will not admit it." Her mother hugged her tight. "I am proud of you, Melody, proud of your strength and your courage." Those words meant more than Melody would have expected. She had thought she did not need her parents' approval anymore, but receiving it felt like a healing of old wounds. Kade's sister Sarah came to visit often, bringing her own children to play with their cousins. Uncle Martin remained a steady presence in their lives, always ready with advice or help. Mrs. Chen became like a grandmother to the children, spoiling them with treats and love. The ranch hands who worked for them became extended family, celebrating holidays and milestones together. When Grayson was 15, already tall and strong like his father, he asked about the story of how his parents met. They were sitting on the porch on a summer evening, watching the sun set over the mountains. "Well," Melody said, sharing a smile with Kade, "it started with a broken wagon wheel." She told the story about being stranded and scared, about Kade appearing like something out of a storybook to rescue her, about the immediate connection they had felt, the way everything had fallen into place so quickly. "Some might call it coincidence," Kade said, his hand finding Melody's. After all these years, he still reached for her constantly, still needed to touch her and be close to her. "But I have always thought there was something more to it. Like your mother was meant to break down in that exact spot, at that exact time, so I would find her." "Some accidents are meant to happen," Melody quoted softly, remembering the day he had first said those words to her. Exactly. Grayson looked between his parents, at the love that still shone so clearly between them even after years of marriage and all the challenges they had faced. "I want that someday, what you two have." "You will find it," Melody assured him. "Maybe not in the way you expect, maybe not when you are looking for it, but you will find it." As the years continued to pass, Melody and Kade grew older together gracefully. Their children grew up and started lives of their own. Grayson took over much of the ranch operation, proving himself to be an excellent cattleman. Iris married a neighboring rancher's son and stayed nearby. James went to college in Denver but came back to help run the horse breeding side of the business. Through it all, Melody and Kade remained devoted to each other. They still took rides up to the high meadow where Kade had first told her he loved her. They still sat on the porch in the evenings, talking and holding hands. They still shared a bed every night, curled together like they had been when they were newly married. On their 30th wedding anniversary, surrounded by children and grandchildren, Kade stood and raised a glass. "To my wife," he said, his voice still strong though his hair was now silver. 30 years ago she broke down on my land, best thing that ever happened to me." Everyone laughed and raised their glasses. "To accidents that are meant to happen," Melody added, her eyes locked on her husband's. "To accidents that are meant to happen," the family echoed. That night, lying in bed with Kade's arms around her, Melody thought about the journey that had brought her here. Leaving Kansas City had been terrifying. That broken wagon wheel had seemed like a disaster. But every step had led her exactly where she was supposed to be. "What are you thinking about?" Kade murmured sleepily. "About how lucky I am, how perfect my life turned out to be." "Our life," he corrected gently. And I am the lucky one. I got to spend 30 years with the most amazing woman I have ever known. 30 years and counting, she said, snuggling closer. We have got a lot more ahead of us. I am counting on it. They lived well into their 80s, long enough to see great-grandchildren born and the ranch pass into Grayson's capable hands, long enough to celebrate 50 years of marriage, then 55, long enough to build a legacy that would last for generations. When Kade finally passed away peacefully in his sleep at 87, Melody was beside him, holding his hand just as she had held it through every important moment of their life together. She mourned deeply, but without regret. They had lived fully, loved completely, built something beautiful together. She lived another 3 years, surrounded by family, still sharp and engaged with the world. On a spring afternoon that reminded her achingly of the day she had arrived in Colorado so many years ago, she sat on the porch of the house she and Kade had shared. The mountains rose in the distance, still magnificent, still home. Grayson found her there that evening, passed peacefully in her sleep with a smile on her face. In her lap was the letter her Aunt Iris had written, the one she had read and reread hundreds of times over the years. At her funeral, Grayson stood before the gathered crowd of family and friends and told the story one more time. The story of the wagon breaking down, of Kade finding Melody, of two people who had built a life and a love that became legendary in the area. My father used to say that some accidents are meant to happen, Grayson said, his voice thick with emotion. He believed my mother was meant to break down on his land that day, that fate or destiny or God had a plan to bring them together. Looking at everything they built, at all of us here today who exist because of them, I think he was right. That broken wagon wheel was not an accident at all. It was the beginning of something extraordinary. The Vaughn family continued to thrive for generations, always remembering the story of how it all began. The ranch remained in the family, growing and changing with the times but keeping its essential character. Melody's original property, her aunt's gift, became a historic site that the family maintained carefully, a reminder of where it all started. And on quiet spring evenings, when the sun set over the Colorado mountains and the aspens whispered in the breeze, you could almost see them there. A young woman with dark hair and a tall cowboy with blue-gray eyes, sitting together on a porch, holding hands, living a love story that proved some accidents really are meant to happen.